Hi, everyone. My name is Jon Auerbach,
And I'm J.D.L. Rosell.
and today we're talking Kickstarter. In recent months, Kickstarter has become kind of an up-and-coming platform for fiction authors to launch their books or to launch special editions. Earlier this year, we saw the groundbreaking, record-setting Kickstarter launched by Brandon Sanderson for 4 surprise books that went on to become the most backed Kickstarter of all time across all categories. And Josiah and I met in various Facebook groups that we're members of, and we found out that we were running Kickstarter campaigns around the same time. So we thought it would be fun to sit down and talk Kickstarter. We're both relatively new to the platform. I launched a campaign last year, and Josiah's campaign is his first one.
Yeah, with John being around before the Brandon Sanderson rush, I think it'll be really good to have his perspective on his old campaign and what he's doing with his new one in the post Brandon Sanderson era.
I'd like to claim that Brandon took the idea to launch a Kickstarter from me, but he actually had a first campaign that he did in the summer of 2020 for the Way of Kings leatherbound edition, which I have on my shelf above me. It did all right. I think it raised $7 million, but this his one this year raised $41 million, and I don't even think he realized that it was or figured that it was going to do that well. Certainly an interesting time to be on the platform.
Sure is.
So Josiah, tell us a little bit about your current campaign that's live and why you decided to launch it on Kickstarter.
Yeah, so the campaign I'm running is for the first book in a new series. The Last Ranger is the book title, and the series name is Ranger of the Titan Wilds. I decided, well, I guess I'll say a little bit about the book. I call it bow and sorcery, where it's not sword and sorcery, it's about archery for the most part and fantasy rangers. The protagonist is in a world where it's overrun by giant elemental creatures that are called titans. And so she has to navigate this world and human politics as well in a quest for vengeance and justice when a tragedy befalls the Rangers Lodge. So that's basically what it's about. As far as why I'm running it on Kickstarter, there's quite a few reasons, actually. First of all, Kickstarter allows you to do things beyond your normal book budget, like create professional maps, have extra bonus illustrations and bonus stories as well. You get to give those to the backers. You can also do add-ons and bookmarks and prints and stuff like that. A few other reasons, it's another revenue stream outside of Amazon. You get more direct interaction with your readers. You're able to cross-sell series. There's just a lot of different reasons why Kickstarter is really powerful, especially for somebody who's locked into Kindle Unlimited and Amazon the rest of the time. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing how this all turns out. And yeah, so I'll kick this back to you, John. You can talk about your current campaign, but also in relation to your first campaign, right?
Yeah, so my current campaign is for book 2 of my NYC Questing Guild series. Book 1, called Guild of Tokens, originally came out almost about 3 years ago in June of 2019, and it did okay, and I entered it in the self-published fantasy blog off that year. And I've been working on book 2, and the premise of the series is, what if the quests from Dungeons and Dragons and video games like World of Warcraft existed in the real world? I've now kind of dubbed it an epic urban fantasy because it's not a traditional urban fantasy in the sense of the Dresden Files or like an Alona Andrews book. It's not about a PI living in a world with like supernatural creatures and the magic. The magical underworld is out there and everyone knows about it. Similar to you've read Neil Gaiman's Neverwhere, where there's really this alternate world. In his book, it's called London Below. I don't have the same mechanic, but it's more of this hidden world that the regular people don't know about. And so that doesn't really fit the urban fantasy tropes in general, and especially what's selling on Amazon. So it was a struggle to kind of pitch to readers, and when you're pitching to readers on Amazon, they're looking at your cover, they're looking at the blurb, and they're making kind of a split-second decision of, is this something I've read before and I would probably like, yes or no? So I was I was really having trouble, connecting and finding readers for this not your typical urban fantasy series. Now, what I liked about Kickstarter is Kickstarter, you don't just have the cover and the blurb. It's a whole launch, it's a whole campaign. You have this whole page that you can build and tell a story. You can use video, you can use images. It's a more immersive experience. There's a whole ecosystem of people browsing on Kickstarter who are looking for, off the beaten path things to back. They're not looking for typical things. They like being part of the creative process. They like supporting creators, as they're creating it. And so what I found in my first campaign, so I decided, based on all those things, I decided to create a special edition version of Guild of Tokens. I commissioned a new cover and maps, and I committed to writing a new novella because the book had been out already at that point for a year and a half. So I wanted to create something new to put in the book and not just have a new cover. So I wrote a new novella that was in the back of the book and also collected all of the short fiction I had written up until that point from the series, and launched it and told family and friends, and it kind of took off. I wasn't expecting to. I set a modest funding goal, and I broke that the first day. And so by the end of it, I had 360 backers and raised over $12,000, and it kind of eclipsed anything I had done on Amazon. So, in the aftermath of that, I thought, this is the way I'm going to be doing my book launches going forward. Now I'm wrapping up book 2 in the series, an all new book, and I'm going to Kickstarter to launch it, fresh for the first time.
That's fantastic. I love hearing that story. And it's not uncommon for a lot of authors, getting sort of the success that they were hoping for on Amazon, but finding it on Kickstarter instead. And kind of like Guild of Tokens, which looks fantastic. I haven't read it yet, but I definitely want to. The cover is great, and the concepts too is really fun.
I believe we share the same cover artist, correct?
Yes, yeah.
Felix Ortiz. Yeah, I mean, Felix's art is fantastic, and I gave him the challenge. I said, look, this isn't a typical urban fantasy. You need to create something that says urban fantasy, but it's not, Dresden Files urban fantasy. And I think he really rose to the occasion.
Definitely did. That cover is fantastic. Yeah, and I love that Kickstarter seems to, like, the people on Kickstarter seem to be looking for books that don't necessarily fit the mold. I wouldn't say that this one of mine, it does fall fairly solidly into epic fantasy, which I think can work on Kickstarter as well. But I love that there's these sort of more niche books that find like a nice audience on Kickstarter. And you've seen that with like steampunk, different sorts of fairy tale retellings. I think it's a really great platform.
Yeah, you could see more of kind of cross-genre mashups. And again, I think, and kind of the mistake I made in everyone's trying to like work the Amazon algorithms. And in order to do that, you really need to hit a sweet spot of what is selling and what people there's all these different, categories, and there are a lot of them, but there aren't a million of them, and you need to hit one that's selling. And then once you start bringing Amazon some, readers, then who read that type of book, the hope is that Amazon will then start sending out your book to everyone else that it thinks would like your book. And when you have a book that doesn't hit, a genre on the nose, the algorithm, doesn't know what to do with that. And you can't go out and say, hey, friends and family, come buy my book, because most likely those friends and family aren't, readers in your genre, and Amazon gets confused and starts recommending your book to people who aren't going to buy it, and then it's kind of a vicious cycle, and then your book kind of collapses. And it feels like you're not so much in control. No one knows. We have a good idea of how books, how Amazon helps you sell books, but we don't know for certain. And with Kickstarter, I feel like you're really more of in control of, you have to bring your audience, but there's an audience there, but it's not so rigid that if you, have your, grandma buy your book, that it'll kind of sink your launch. It's a smaller company than Amazon, and I like that, I've interacted with the publishing liaison before, which I recommend people reach out to Oriana Leckert if they're looking to launch a fiction or comics Kickstarter. She's great. Yeah, it's a platform that like wants creators to succeed. Like Kickstarter doesn't make money if you go on there and you your campaign fails. They don't get any money.
Yeah, I think you're really speaking to that impersonality of Amazon versus much more interaction with the readers and more direct interaction, right? There's a comment section, where you can literally talk with them. I think that's a huge difference and something that's very appealing about it.
How have you found marketing your Kickstarter to your existing readers versus what you've done in the past for your regular book launches?
Yeah, it's been in a lot of ways quite different. I feel like this, and it's, to be fair, it's been more work, but I like the kind of work that it is because you're setting up this story on the Kickstarter page, right? And that requires you to do, figure out what I'm going to say about the series, what am I going to say about the book, what am I going to say about all these individual components, and then there's all the components of what am I saying to my readers in addition to this to make them really intrigued. Because in my normal launches, I mostly say, this is the blurb, this is where it is on Amazon, this is the discount price, because I'm often discounting to get them into it. And that's sort of it, There's not as much like teasing them with, what's my inspiration for this series? What do the creatures in this world look like? So there's all of these extra components that, yes, more work, but really fun to do. And I think really get people more excited. To be fair, you could do some of this in a regular book launch as well, but I think Kickstarter lends itself to leading you into doing it because of the information that they ask for on their story.
Yeah, I think there's the aspect of when you're marketing a Kickstarter campaign, you're going to market it towards your existing audience. But at the same time, you want to make the page friendly to people who are just going to Kickstarter in their daily, browsing, looking for new projects, maybe have never heard of you before. And you're able to build kind of this excitement and tell this story to get someone who's never heard of you before to back your campaign. And what I was surprised at during my first campaign was, so I had the ebook available, paperback, and a hardcover, and I had people who had never bought one of my books before, were completely new to me, backing the hardcover at a significantly higher price than what I was selling the ebook on for Amazon, and that was super surprising. And I think that's when you build a good campaign and you make it attractive and you put a lot of effort into the packaging and the story, you're going to get these people who are excited to back and spend that money, even if they've never heard of you before. And different from advertising on Facebook and sending a reader there and having them bounce off your page because they don't want to spend $5 on an ebook.
Yeah, and it seems like the readers on Kickstarter, they're like excited by the newness of finding somebody that they haven't read before, right? Whereas on Amazon, maybe they feel that way, but it seems like more they want the experience and the author is kind of secondary to that. If that resonates with you.
I would say yes. I'll caveat it that I think people I certainly like discovering, up and coming creators. And then I also like coming back and when seeing creators who are coming back to the platform either with every launch or or just additional launches and watching them grow. It kind of sends a signal like, I knew this person was doing well. I backed them from the beginning. I knew them when, and look at them now. There's a comics creator, Curtis Clow, who I had backed one of his first campaigns, I think in the summer of 2020 when I was first, paying more attention to Kickstarter. He had this comic series, Beastlands. It's an epic fantasy about a boy who has a companion beast, and I think it was his launch for the fifth issue, and he raised over $50,000. But I went back and looked and saw how he kind of built up his audience, with each campaign along the way. And then meanwhile, I backed his future campaigns in that series, and he had several other comic series. And in a couple of weeks, or by the time this goes live, the trade paperback of the first 5 issues have been published by Dark Horse Comics, one of the major comics publishers. So he's had this kind of trajectory of, starting from the beginning of his career, his first comic, and now he's being published by, one of the major comics publishers. So I like kind of finding those creators who are growing their career and coming in wherever they are at the moment of their career.
And you having a hand sort of in their rise, right? You kind of, I mean, it's a small part, right? But that's part of the whole appeal of Kickstarter is that whoever's backing it is helping with making this project possible at all.
In the comics category, you see people launching single issues that would normally retail for $4 or $5 at $15 or $20 on Kickstarter, and people gladly paying that and happy to pay that, happy to support the creators. And it's a different, it's as you said before, it's a different revenue stream. It's almost a different market. These are the people who are, super fans, or they want it first, and they'll gladly pay more for it. Marketing to people who are excited to read your work and who become your super fans, to me is great. And to have, at the end of your Kickstarter campaign, you get everyone's actual name. They're not just these nameless, if you go into the Amazon, sales report, they're not just these nameless figures. You can start a relationship, maintain a relationship with your backers. If you're doing things right, they'll tell you, and if you're not, they'll also tell you. It's not another thing that's great about the platform.
Yeah, feedback either way is valuable, isn't it? Back on marketing a bit, I suppose the flip side of Kickstarter is that since it is usually higher priced items, you might have a more difficult time convincing people to hop on a project. That's kind of what my assumption has been, especially with my current audience. They're used to buying 99-cent books, at least for the book ones. So that's kind of why I've done a more intensive campaign, like building up an individual Kickstarter list and addressing some of the concerns people might have with Kickstarter, and kind of doing that over a couple months now. Because, yeah, I think there's potential barriers.
That's very smart. Yeah, agreed. I think there's this idea of people who are buying ebooks on Amazon and what they expect. And, if you have a past successful launches, you do things a certain way, people get used to, okay, I know I'm going to get, the book one at 99 cents. Great. And, it's kind of a familiarity that your readers are expecting. And I think that's smart that you're taking this time to say, okay, I'm doing something different here. Here's why I'm doing it. I'd love you to come along. And I assume you're also saying if you don't want to, that's fine too. It'll be available on other platforms later.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and to counterbalance that, you just have to offer above and beyond in the Kickstarter, right? So they're going to get exclusives that they won't get through Amazon. It'll have illustrations, which the ebook won't have on Amazon because it costs you to do that. You get dinged several cents per image. So there's all of these reasons why maybe they would want to back the Kickstarter, even though it costs more. It's not like they're getting the same exact thing, right?
Yeah. You're selling it. You're selling a different experience. You're selling that they get access to the book before, going through the regular retail channels. You're selling kind of, as we talked about, being part of this community. On Amazon, you get reviews. On Goodreads, you get reviews, but I've gotten messages from backers. Oh, I got the book today. I can't wait to read it. I don't have, or when I email out my list, my long-standing email list, it's rare to get those kind of messages. And with Kickstarter, I've gotten so many messages from backers. So it's sometimes you need that positive reinforcement and hearing from your fans, and it's easy to that Kickstarter really facilitates that.
Yeah, you absolutely do. I mean, that unspoken, intangible benefit is really valuable. I mean, it keeps us going, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So I wanted to ask a little bit on marketing on your first campaign. So you said you sent out to your friends and family. Were there some other things that you were kind of doing on that first campaign you think worked for you?
I think it was kind of a culmination of, I had been writing for years, meeting, fellow authors. As we said, for my past book launches, I told my family, do not buy it. Don't buy it right now. You could buy it later, or I'll send you a copy. And so, part of it was certainly, rallying people to come support this because you didn't have that kind of negative algorithmic, reaction that you get on Amazon. So that was definitely part of it. Part of it was having an existing, readership and newsletter who had maybe read the book before, or maybe had been on my list but hadn't read it yet. and having kind of a network of other authors who either back the campaign or help spread the word. And so I think that's kind of the kindling, I would say, for you want to have that great first day, first 48-hour push, because at a psychological level. So once you do that, you hit your goal on the first day by bringing in those kind of different groups of people, and Kickstarter will see that, and it does have its own algorithmic slash recommendation engine. And once it sees that this campaign is successful, that it's either funded or it's trending towards funding very quickly, it will start emailing out people. It will start featuring the campaign further up in search results on the website or in the footers of emails that other campaign creators are sending out to their backers and backer updates. And so once you get that going and kind of prove that, hey, this is something that's doing well and people are backing, then you will bring in the Kickstarter super backers slash the Kickstarter ecosystem will then start working in your favor, and you'll have the people who've never heard of you before, they're coming across your campaign. So I definitely saw, once I kind of hit that in the middle part of the campaign, I had people trickling in from finding it on Kickstarter. Another thing that worked well, I had, this is January of 2021, February 2021, there weren't so many other fiction campaigns running at that time. The backer swaps I did that I was able to arrange brought in new readers. And so those two things definitely helped bring the funding up and the backer count up as the campaign progressed, because you'll have this big surge at the beginning, hopefully from your existing audience, and then the middle. I don't care if you're Brandon Sanderson or you're me. If you go look at the funding trajectory of both mine and Brandon Sanderson's campaigns, at a relative level, it's the same thing. Big spike, and then kind of low, middle, and then a big spike at the end. And so you have those people finding your campaign over the course of 2, 3, 4 weeks, and then you use kind of the psychology of, okay, time's running out, and then you'll have people come in back at the end. And it's another great thing about Kickstarter is you have a reason to talk about your launch for however long the campaign is going. Whereas I feel like on Amazon, it's the first week, and then you kind of feel like, I don't really want to bother you anymore. Like, the book is out there, go get it. And likewise, when you hit your funding goal, you can start offering stretch goals. And again, that's bringing in some new excitement, gives you something to talk about that you may not necessarily have during a regular Amazon launch. And that definitely worked for me. I had 4 stretch goals planned. We blew through those pretty quickly. And so I was kind of scrambling during the campaign to come up with new stuff to kind of keep the excitement going.
Yeah, I think you said a lot of great things there, and I just wanted to pull out a couple of them. So one thing is that it's important to say we're not anti-algorithm, right? As you said, Kickstarter has algorithms just like Amazon does. But I think some of the differences with Kickstarter are, one, we kind of know how the algorithms are working on Kickstarter, which is helpful. And all of those other benefits of Kickstarter are still there, even though the algorithm, we want that to help multiply our efforts. But all of those other things do, I think, make it a lot easier and palatable for launches than on Amazon typically. And I think another thing that was really great was that you spent years building up your audience and your network, right? And so Kickstarter, I don't think most people are going to have like instant success if they haven't done any legwork, right? You still have to put in the work to find an initial audience. But the hope is that Kickstarter then multiplies whatever efforts you bring in. I've heard this rule that it's rule of thumb that it's for every backer you bring, Kickstarter kind of brings a backer as well. So if you use kind of that simple math, you can kind of see how, okay, I'll put in some work, we'll get some love back.
I'd agree with that. For my first campaign, the other good thing is Kickstarter will tell you where your backers are coming from. So it'll say, okay, these are the backers that were notified signed up to be notified at launch. These are how many of those people backed and how much they, cumulatively backed at. You can create referral tags. Okay, I put a tag on my newsletter. These are the people I know or on my newsletter. And then it says, and then there's just a big category of Kickstarter. And it's just, these are the people that came from the platform. And I think it broke out to probably, yeah, 40 to 50%, I'd say, of the, some, it's not perfect. And, you could have someone, get the email and, back later through a different channel. Like I have a tendency to I want to granulate down and have know where every single person came from, but you can't do that. But I'd say, yeah, between 40 to 50% of the backers of my first campaign came, via the Kickstarter platform. And to your point of, the, the success of my first campaign was the result of, building that audience over time. I'd say even if you're a brand new author and, hopefully, and you want to launch a book on Kickstarter, I still think it's a good platform to do that. I think it's just, setting your expectations and setting your funding, down a bit. And, you're still going to have to do the legwork to bring people in. It's maybe not going to be as many people as it were if you had been writing and publishing books for, 3 or 4 years. But the same things apply. You bring in the people you're able to bring in, and, Kickstarter will bring, backers to you if you're creating a great campaign, and then once you deliver on that campaign and you come back again, you've got this foundation and you just kind of keep building up. So as long as you go in with, reasonable expectations and not expecting to, raise $40 million with your first ever book, I'd say it's also a good platform for someone just starting out if they're willing to put in the legwork.
Wait, I didn't realize I'm not going to raise 40 million.
No, I'm sorry to tell you, it's not good.
All right. I'll curb my expectations.